I want to move on to the supply chain and operational challenges that we're facing, and perhaps ways into 2024 that might be able to be even discussed or perhaps even addressed. I want to talk through, Andy, with you, the short-term maybe solutions. I hate to use that word, but may exist, starting with chain of custody and chain of identity. Um, talk through with us why chain of custody, chain of identity is actually a challenge.
Yeah, sure. So the product we're making is for all intents and purposes an autologous therapy. It's unlike a CAR T, you're not taking a patient's T cells, genetically modifying and returning those expanded cells back to that same patient, where that's an immediate sort of critical chain of identity challenge, because the foreign T cells injected into a patient. So if there's a failure in chain of identity in the CAR T space, and if you inject a patient with foreign T cells, you will have an instantaneous host versus graft disease response that can be fatal, or almost certainly will be fatal. In the mRNA vaccine space, customized, personalized vaccine space, the immediate response the patient would have if they were injected with the wrong vaccine would be basically nothing, but then the ongoing response would also be nothing. So if the therapy is working, but if you inject a patient with the wrong RNA vaccine, then nothing will happen. And that's equally fatal when you're talking about a patient who's, an advanced pancreatic cancer patient or an advanced melanoma patient. So maintaining the chain of identity from acquiring the tumor sample, moving it into our sequencing lab, wherever that would be, to sequence the tumor, to identify the antigen, neoantigens, to then transmit that data to the plasmid manufacturer to manufacture the plasmid that's specific for that vaccine, moving the plasmid into your manufacturing facility where you manufacture the RNA, put it into vials, encapsulate it, put it into vials, release it, return it back to the patient for a series of a protocol that results in multiple doses over a period of time. All of that has to be kept completely under control with zero tolerance for failure. And so that, at scale, that can be very challenging. And we are very actively designing the processes necessary to support that type of a process. That's this 360-degree journey of starting with a patient's tumor cells and ending up with a patient being dosed multiple times with a customized vaccine. And all the steps that have to take place to ensure that that happens correctly is the supply chain challenge for these therapies.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I want to go back, though. I think that what we talked through regarding manufacturing, I want to make sure we cover the following. Andy, I know throughout our discussion today, we talked about, the giant task that is scaling manufacturing, but perhaps talk us through how to maybe some best practices in scaling manufacturing without introducing error. And from a reliability standpoint, turnaround time, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so all of those elements are critical to the overall process, right? So, and one of the biggest challenges is if you start back at what is it we're actually trying to make. What we're trying to make isn't like antibodies or small molecules where you develop the process and then literally scale it up just to make larger yields of that same material. We can't do that because we're making it once for one patient. So the only thing you can do is scale it out, meaning you have to have, you have to develop a manufacturing process that's as quick as possible. The sequence. So there's three kind of key elements to this manufacturing. There's the sequencing of the tumor, there's the manufacturing of the plasmid, and then there's the manufacturing of the encapsulated RNA. So we call that upstream and downstream in our lexicon. And those elements have to be lined up from a scheduling standpoint. They have to be scaled out so that you can do multiple patients in the shortest period of time possible. And by scaling out, that really means having large, classified suites with multiple sets of manufacturing equipment that is manufacturing these products in each one on an individualized basis. And so it's areas that we're looking at is how many of these process steps can we automate? How many of them can we collapse together into one machine that does multiple steps, that does them in a highly precise way that results in a very high success rate in manufacturing, that does them in a way that minimizes the amount of time it takes, because turnaround time is critical to these patients. And actually, turnaround time is a key element to defining patient access, because the longer it takes to manufacture, the less chance you have of actually reaching the patient, because the patients actually don't have a lot of time in the therapeutic areas that we're currently looking at. And so you have to develop a robust enough process that connects all of these elements together in the shortest amount of time possible with the highest manufacturing success rate possible, that allows you to reach the largest number of patients, essentially.